Welcome, and we'll start out with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And we are now into Parshat Bo. It's the third Parsha of the book of Shemot, of the book of Exodus. And of course, this is where we find, and we're actually in chapter 12. That's here, Yud Bet, chapter 12. And this is where we find the very first mitzvah given to the Jewish people as a Jewish people. And the mitzvah we are discussing right now has to do with the mitzvah of Pesach, right? The various laws of Pesach. And what is interesting now, of course, is that the style of the Torah is moving from narrative, literary narrative, maybe historical novel form, if I were to call it, or historical literature, might be an even more accurate way to describe it, into legal material, trying to give us that opportunity to link ourselves to the divine by responding to divine commandments. And I don't know that we recognize this, how can I put it, the profound significance of practicing mitzvot and how it is such a great, I don't know even how to find the right metaphor for it. Like I almost feel like feeling it's like it's a light, a great path of light, or maybe even a river, but something that connects us, right? My point is that it is something that takes us close into the divine, and also brings the divine into this world. Um, I only fairly recently came to the realization that the reason why we say Eloheinu, which is a possessive form of Elohim, I knew for a long time that the word Elohim is associated with judgment, and my initial understanding of Eloheinu was the acceptance of God as being the ultimate judge of the universe and consequently of our lives too, and therefore seeing that connection to the divine as one that we look into our lives and see our lives as blessed, and those moments of adversity as great lessons, etc., etc. But now I understand a little further, and that is that when in fact we do, how do we make Adonai our Elohim? And that is by responding essentially in the ways I mentioned, but also specifically that the degree to which we perform commandments and try to be responsive to the idea and the notion of divine command. And of course, along with that goes a very important word that's associated with Jewish legal practice called chiyuv, which means an obligation, that we understand that we have obligations towards the divine, and when we have fulfilled those obligations, we have done what we needed to do. And when if we don't do those obligations, then the word is chayav. One owes something. And I think it's also linked to a sense of appreciation, that this is our acknowledgement of the divine is also the practice that is the basic, how could I put it, reason for performing mitzvot. And I'm not thrilled with the word reason. Rationale, maybe, is this deep sense of appreciation for our lives and the opportunity that the world presents to us in our lives in every sense, both in all the blessings and in the adversity, which sometimes turn out to be blessings as well. So that when we say Adonai Eloheinu in the Shema or elsewhere, there's a reason. We're saying that Adonai, the term Adonai referring to the ultimate existent one, the one in which all existence is included, right? The cause of all other existence, is in fact not just simply that. That understanding of God is It's independent of whether we believe or we don't believe. But the Eloheinu is up to us. Whether or not we make God our Elohim is that privilege that we have as human beings. And in some ways, the prayer Aleinu, which can be divided into three parts, summarizes this beautifully. Bart, let me recognize you.
A
Yeah,
couple questions.
sure.
One, like thou shalt not kill, that's a negative commandment.
Yes, correct. It
So
is.
I didn't kill. Does that make me, I mean, it seems like that's the not doing a negative commandment is not a big deal.
Well, it is because we are tempted so often to violate the commandments by actually committing negative commandments. But there was something I heard many years ago. This was when I was still in Canton, Ohio, and I thought it was a very interesting observation that negative commandments can be performed by dead people. Dead people perform negative commandments as well. However, only living people can perform positive commandments. And of course, we know that there are 248 positive commandments and there are 365 negative commandments.
I did
Um,
not know that.
yes, we talk about the Taryag mitzvot. Okay, Taryag is a mnemonic using the Hebrew letters as numbers, giving them number values that adds up to 613.
Well, that I knew, the
Yeah,
613. I
right,
didn't know how
right.
they split up.
So yeah, Shisa Lavim, there are 365 negative commandments, and Ramach the of Asin, there are 248 positive commandments, and traditionally and symbolically, the 365 actually, although we might say the Julian or the Julian calendar, nevertheless, it's supposed to correspond to 365 sinews and 248 bones. And I think that's symbolic of how they encompass the whole human being. So, and there's probably more symbolism that one can extract from that particular metaphor. At any rate, the idea is that we are actually privileged, that the ability to perform commandments, and that the Jewish people were singled out to do this uh, was an amazing gift, and the benefits are also amazing. Although we don't do it for the benefit. The idea is we do it out of love, and 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 of course there's so many of them, and it's a process. So it's not you don't keep score. You understand it as a basic motif in your life. So, so we're in, this is what we're dealing with. And Rashi is a little bit different here because he definitely reflects the halachic material in the rabbinic material. And but the way he does it and the way he is able to express material that is actually very sophisticated, very difficult, is pretty amazing. So, but we'll get a sense of halachic process. That's what's going to happen as we move through this. So let's do this. Barishon ba'arba'asa yom lechodesh, on the first, right? On the first, this means actually the first month. Ba'arba'asa yom, on the 14th day, lachodesh of the month, ba'erev, in the evening, tochlu matzot, you shall eat unleavened bread. And that's, of course, a positive commandment. But
Mhm.
positive, it's a time-bound commandment, meaning, right, that there's a specific time given for us to eat unleavened bread. Ad yom ha'echad v'esrim, until the 21st day, okay, where to eat matzot, lachodesh ba'arev, of the 21st day of the month in the evening, right? So 7 complete days. And of course, we know halachically days start in the evening, vahi erev, vahi boker, and so that's the commandment. But we are going to analyze this carefully. And I've mentioned this a number of times that my understanding of the process that we are engaging in or about to engage in, including all the rabbinic material that is out there, tons and tons of it, oceans of it, all are attempts to specify what we mean by saying, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. So, Ad Yom Ha'echad Ve'esrim, until the 21st day. Lama Ne'emar. Why state this? What's the point of it? V'halo kfar ne'emar shiv'at yamim. It already mentions that you should do this for 7 days. So we see it's not mentioned here necessarily, but it's mentioned everywhere. Here, in fact. Well, this is a different statement, but in a way it's complementing it. But it does say elsewhere, you shall eat matzot for 7 days. So if it's mentioned there, right, the Fishinemar, it says, okay, so here, the answer to this question is, because it seems like a duplication, the Fishinemar Yamim, because it says 7 days in that mitzvah, 7 days you should eat matzot, we know that the term day could mean daylight, right? Day is ambiguous. It can mean 24 hours, but it can also mean only during the day. So, lefish nemar yamim, leilot mimnayin. It mentions 7 days there. So how do we know that nights are included? How do we know that the nights are also included in this mitzvah of eating unleavened bread? Talmud lomar. For this reason, Scripture states, and by the way, this Talmud lomar is like a QED sort of thing. Ad, and that's why it says, Ad Yom HaEchadasar. That's why it says until the 21st day. And that's how we know that the nights must be included as well. Going on. Shiv'at yamim, for 7 days, sa'or lo yimatzeh bevatechem. No leaven shall be found in your homes. It is an interesting statement, right? It's put in the passive sense, right? So it's interesting because is this a positive commandment or is it a negative commandment when it says it shouldn't be found? It's not so clear, at least to me, it's not so clear, right? Ki kol ochel machmetzet, and now it tells you the consequences of anyone who eats, who consumes leavened bread, right? Machmetzet, something leavened. V'nichreta hanefesh. This is a profound commandment. It's saying the consequences are that soul shall be cut off. Now, we've dealt with this term before. What is the word karet literally means cut off. What exactly do we mean by cut off? So there are actually two opinions. The one opinion that I recollect is that it means premature death. Okay. It could also possibly mean that it could also mean extinction. In other words, there's an implication about this. If in fact we do face oblivion, regardless, what's the punishment? On the other hand, in fact, if there is afterlife beyond this, then there's consequences. So at this point, in my studies, I am convinced that the Torah truly is also a guideline to how one achieves immortality. And it may sound like a small thing, but you know something? We may think it's a small thing. Apparently, the Torah considers it a major thing. Not every not every violation of a mitzvah involves karet. In fact, there is a tractate called Kritot, which I think analyzes. I've never studied the tractate Kritot, but I'm going to guess that what it does is it enumerates and analyzes the various commandments that are associated with karet, which is translated as excision. So. V'nichreta hanefesh, that nefesh, that soul, that individual will be cut off. Me'adat Yisrael, from the community of Israel. Bager, whether they are a convert, a proselyte, uva Ezrach haaretz, or whether or not they are a citizen, right? In other words, I believe what they're saying is a born Jew, regardless. So there we go. Analyzing it. Lo yimatze bevatechem, shall not be found in your homes. Well, wait a second, it says homes, right? And again, we are sort of placing a legal eye, or a legal magnifying glass on this material. So if it says in your homes, minayin legvulim, what about outside your homes? In other words, what about in your backyard? Is it only in your house, right? Talmud lomar bechol gvulcha, I'm going to guess. In other words, it goes on to say elsewhere, in all your borders. Ma Talmud lomar bevatechem. So what is meant by in your homes then? If it says in all your borders, right, we would think your homes are included. So why your homes? Ma beitcha birshutcha. What it means is that just as your home is in your domain, is under your control, af gvulcha shebirchutcha. In other words, what it's doing is it's acting as a limit to borders, meaning your borders shebirchutcha, that are under your control. So, look, we have borders of the United States of America, right? And there's plenty of areas there that are not under any Jewish person's control. On the other hand, my backyard is, or my front yard, but the sidewalk isn't necessarily. So, all right. Yatsa chamso shel oved kochavim. And what is this to exclude? So the yatsa means to exclude the chametz, right? The leaven shel oved kochavim. This means, literally it means an idolater. But here it is simply the term that was used to describe non-Jews, okay? But we can understand as an idolater. Shehu Etzel Yisrael, look at this. Okay. It also means that you exclude leaven that belongs to a non-Jew, that is Etzel Yisrael, and that is this. We're really pushing the legal notions here that happens to be in a Jewish person's possession, right? In other words, at least within his home, right? Or you rent property, and you've rented property to a non-Jew. Is that non-Jew allowed to have chametz on Pesach? V'lo kibel alav acharut, but the Jew did not accept responsibility for that, I believe, for that chametz. So again, the fact that we're peeling it apart like this is because we really want to make sure we're catching all the inferences and we're dealing with them and we're trying to understand them. Okay? So that's the Bevatechem. The Bevatechem is in some ways something that excludes other situations. Kichol ochel machmetzet, because anyone who eats machmetzet, right, leavening, la'anosh karet. So here's the point. So it is to serve as a karet, as a punishment, al hasaor, regarding leavening. Va'alo kfar anash ala chametz. But it's already given the punishment for leavened bread, right? Ella, but it's to make sure shelo tomar chametz shera'ui. One more word, I'm sure it's la'achila, right? La'achila. You shouldn't say, okay, it's only talking about, because it says chametz, which is unleavened, chametz is leavened bread, right? We shouldn't think, because it says leavened bread and it says saor, we should only refer to yeast that is edible, right? That is suitable for consumption. What about a leavening agent that is not suitable for consumption. Is that included as well? And yes, it is, right? And we're saying it shall not be found in your homes. So, this is the way we do it, okay? Anash alav saor she'eno ra'ui la'achila. Okay, so this is the argument, right? In other words, because it says machnet, if it had just said chametz, we should think that when it's referring to leaven, it's only talking about leaven that is fit for anash alav. He's punishing for food for leaven that is fit to be eaten. So, or, however, leaven per se, like yeast, right? She'eino ra'ui la'achela, but it isn't fit for consumption. Lo yenesh alav. Maybe you don't get punishment. But the point is, okay, it is, in fact, you do get punished for having such agents in your home, Pesach. This is the Mechilta. It's a reference. Mechilta is a Tanaitic midrash, a halachic midrash. It exists. We still have it. Okay. And the Mechilta is like something that you might say is a precursor of the Babylonian Talmud, right? The kinds of argumentations, because it is halachic, and it does the kinds of arguments that we're discussing here in this midrash. And in some ways, you can see the process which eventually led to the Babylonian Talmud. Okay. V'im anash al haseor, v'lo anash al hachametz. So the question now is, why does it mention both? If it only mentioned a punishment, right, regarding leaven, or yeast or something like that, right? V'lo anash ala chametz. And the Torah didn't mention any punishment regarding chametz, leavened bread. Hayiti omer, I might have thought, Sa'or shahu mechametz acherim anash alav. We might think, well, it's because the Torah is only forbidding Sa'or. Well, Sa'or, we know, acts as an agent on other things, like yeast. Yeast causes the bread to leaven, right? So, in other words, if the Torah just forbid Sa'or, we might think that that is the only thing, right? Anash alav, that the Torah would be saying there's a punishment for keeping Sa'or. Chametz she'eno machmetz acherim, but if it's chametz, if it's leavened bread, she'eno mechametz acherim, it doesn't act as a leavening agent on other foods. Lo ye'enesh alav. The Torah doesn't forbid you to do that. Lachein, and for this reason, or lachach ne'emru shnehem, and for this reason, both are mentioned. Please notice, right, if you take a step back, just the way Rashi is doing his interpretation now. And by the way, one of other Rashi's great achievements was this explanation of the Babylonian Talmud. Most of it, right? I mean, huge, huge piece of work if you think about it. Okay. Bager uve Ezrach haaretz. So it mentions both the proselyte, the convert, uva Ezrach haaretz, and the one who is a citizen of the land, literally. Why? Why does it mention by both? Lefi shehanes ne'esa Yisrael. It needs to mention this because the miracle of Pesach, of the angel passing over the homes of the Israelites, was only done for the Israelites. Hutzrach lerabot et hagerim. That is why it needs to include proselytes, because initially they're not associated with this miracle. However, the Jewish people are someone who's born a Jew. And I'm going to stop here and let's go. I'm going to mark the place. And if anyone has any comments at this point, I would welcome them. If you have any questions, if I wasn't clear in my explanations or anything like
Yeah, I have a question.
that.
When I
Sure.
go to the grocery store, there's kosher food. And you can't buy kosher food. It's got to say kosher for Passover, not just kosher. I don't understand that.
So leaven, food that becomes leaven, is limited to 5 species of grain. Okay? So oranges are not subject to leaven. You don't have to buy kosher for Pesach oranges. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Meat that has been slaughtered in a kosher way, kosher meat is automatically kosher for Pesach. But there are food products that contain wheat, barley, oats, rye, or spelt. Any of those products and any mixture of those which can be subject to leavening. And
Mm.
that's why they must be marked kosher for Pesach. Also, there are other products that that may be made in factories where leavened products are also included. And the truth is that when it comes to, as you can see from the little that we've done, the Bible is quite specific about not having any in your home. That was the first verse we read about saying, it shall not be found. Okay. So there are various levels in which leaven is prohibited on Pesach. So I'm going to stop the recording with this.